probably very much unknown by the youth. Yeah, I can understand that because we are a funding mechanism that has been working with governments, and governments means mature older men and women. Even though even though that we've been relatively close to the work that civil society has been doing. Some of you may have heard about the Small Grant Program, which is a GEF UNDP program that works with civil society. Uh, Looking into the future, the GEF looks into multiple opportunities. One is, how do we facilitate strategic fundings so they can integrate themselves much better, not just in the way that they design and implement projects, but how the projects can help them integrate themselves much better. You know, in the governments, the right hand side of the government doesn't know what the left hand side of the government does. So while you're protecting forests, there's another agency destroying forests. The GEF needs to help countries to generate more policy coherence, be able to facilitate through their projects more integration across the sectors. Until very recently, only ministers of environment attended the CBD, UNFCCC, and the UNCCD conventions. And more, we see the benefits of those investments, whereby now we see other actors from other sectors. The CBD has done a great job in bringing this element of mainstreaming biodiversity within sectors. Otherwise, we'll be working on silos. So the GEF looks into that. And as we look into that future on how we can integrate much better ourselves through the projects and helping the countries, we look into a more strategic long-term investment, which is investing in the system change. And investing in the system change is not an abstract concept, or it may be perceived as an abstract context. How do we invest in the system change? Well, there's multiple ways to think about it, but for me, there's one very clear to me. Investing in the system change is investing in the youth, in the young generation. So this is how we see things. While we keep on investing with governments and working with them at the financial mechanism for the different conventions where we want more coherence, bringing the right-hand side of the government with the left-hand side of the government, integrating across conventions and integrating across sectors, that other more strategic longer-term investment working with the youth should be done. We already work with civil society. We will continue working with civil society in a broad manner. We already work with women, and we work with indigenous communities. Now, we see an opportunity to really work on a long-term basis in a very strategic manner with the youth, because they are the ones who has the real possibility to do the system change. Nevertheless, the GEF, as you know it, it is a little bit of old school, old school. My generation, my generation is old school. I don't want to be considered old school. I mean, I'm a kid inside myself, nevertheless. So we need to be an option for the youth. We need to be an option for the youth. Probably none of you know what the GEF was all about a few days ago. I hope that from now on, you can understand much better the GEF, what it does, and what it aims to do into the future. I got an ultimate objective, which is investing in the youth in a very comprehensive, long-term, coherent manner, so we can invest in all of you, which are the ones who will do the system change. And today is the first time that we have an event in our pavilion whereby we plan for this long-term investment. And there is a very interesting political momentum. There's an alignment for the GEF to become a major source of support. And I want to be very clear. When we say a major source of support, I'm talking about money. I'm not talking about anything that is not money, because this is our business. Our business is to finance. I, I wonder how you are, everybody's here evidently, but I wonder who financed your stay here. I don't think you put your money out of your pocket and you pay your trip. Somebody's financing you. And I bet the financing to just be here is extremely difficult for all of you. Where do you go? Do they go, do your government finance your trip here? No. I bet that probably an embassy finance you to be here. No? A donor? Well, there's a donor. At least I know something. It's very difficult to you, and you need to do it constantly. Constantly. There's a lot of uncertainties associated to the work. And you come here without, knowing if you're going to have money for the hotel, money for the meals, I mean, many other things. I used to be a guy like you all that I was supported when I was young, and that made a difference in me and my career. And even though the work that the GEF aims to do with the youth into the future is building capacity, making you all better professionals. You may be climate or CBD negotiators. You may be leaders of the private sector. You may be ministers. Definitely. We need to invest in your career. But investing in your career is also, for me, it is very clear to me that we need to invest in putting you where you need to be. You need to be in the negotiations. You need to be in the international events. You need to be able to have the basic funding to do what a small youth-run organization is. So today, I want to begin giving the vision and begin receiving the feedback so we can work all together and the GEF can be not old school, rather than something that you can feel close to you, very close to you. We want to be impactful because our mission is to contribute in the system change. And ourselves alone in our modality will, yes, help in the system change, but it will take a longer time. So being very strategic on how we do things are very important, particularly with regards to the negotiations and the implementation of the negotiation. CBD, in less than a month, will be in Montreal working for ambition outcomes of COP15 that will set the basis for the next decade. So it's not just a matter of GEF helping youth in being a strong voice. It's not just GEF training the future negotiators. It's also the GEF training the future implementators of the agreements. So working inside the conventions is extremely important. So today, I will have the pleasure to share with some of your colleagues here some of the insights of what we need to do. It will be great, and I want to be a little bit disruptive this afternoon because probably you prepare for this session. There's a script here, a program, and I want to be a little bit disruptive with the fact that I would like to ask some questions and have some interactions. Particularly, I want to hear from you all what the GEF should be doing. What are your expectations on how resource mobilization and the finance for the implementation of this convention should be a springboard for the youth to do much better? How do we help the youth to be here in the side events and being there in the main event? How do we do that? I mean, those are things that I would like to talk today. So we'll go through a first round of, introductions, reactions to my comments. And as I go through, I will come with another round of questions. Here is basically, some reactions to my comments. Then I will do some questions, and then we can have an exchange within you people and we here at the panel. So can you please introduce yourself and give us your initial statement? Can I begin with you, Patricia?
Hello.
Yeah, you need to put the mic very close to your mouth.
My name is Patricia Kombo from Kenya, and I am a UNCCD Land Hero. And I run a community-based organization whereby we are working on promoting sustainable land use practices, partnering with communities, women and school-going children, training them on how to use land sustainably, how to adapt, and how to mitigate. And this initiative started in 2019 after I visited the northern part of Kenya in the Lodwar. And from watching how land was degraded, how the ecosystem had shifted from the green color to brown, and watching women and young people, I thought, what would I do to help my community better? And from there, the idea of working with communities, because I realized there was a disconnect between humanity, or rather people and land. People just viewed land as something so common to them. And from there, I realized actually land was the critical and vital point between humanity, livelihoods, ecosystem, and climate change. And from there, I started advocating for better use of land, because I believe land is our identity, and land is the linkage for healthy, prosperous, and better communities. So I do not call myself a climate activist, but I call myself a land activist, because I know what land can do to us. I know the benefits that my community can get from the land, and I see the potential that the land has. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let us go over there. Can you introduce yourself? Give us your initial reaction statement.
Sure. Hello, my name is Jakim Abdul Hamid. I'm from Kenya, and I'm part of a network, a global network called Global Youth Biodiversity Network, but I'm from Kenyan chapter. So basically, GYBN is the youth focal point to the CBD on matters policies. So we are so much into the policy aspect in this biodiversity space. We realize that communicating our ideas without really embedding our ideas into policy, it won't receive much attention from the government and policymakers. So we are trying to ensure that the next generation of young people is aware of issues that are related to biodiversity and how they can really bring the policy aspect of it, how they can communicate their ideas through a very transformative change. And so every country has its own chapter in Africa. We are, at least currently, we have 21 countries in Africa where GBN has presence. But every country has its own issue that they are dealing with. Particularly in my country, we are dealing with trying to create awareness on the values and threats to biodiversity loss, so that the communities that live within those protected areas can understand how to value biodiversity and also contribute to halting the biodiversity loss. We have run a number of programs in Kenya, ranging from trainings of young people on policies. We have done capacity building on projects. There is a project that we are really working on in Kajiado on some climate smart agriculture, because these guys are conservation by nature, but climate change has really impacted them. So we also need to shift away from relying on that kind of nomadic life to venture into more fulfilling careers like climate smart agriculture, to have a home, not to move, because schools don't move with them. They have schools there, hospitals don't move with them. They need to remain in the communities and do something more fulfilling. So that's what GYBN does. And as I said, it's autonomous. Every country has its own issues. Uganda has something that they do different from what we are doing in Kenya. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Max.
Hi, how are you? I'm Máximo from Argentina. I'm part of a youth-led organization called EcoHouse Global. We work with more than 40 programs in our region. Also, I'm part of UNDP Generation 17 initiative and the LAC Youth Climate Change Network, or another networks, because we work every day with many organizations. I would like to thank the GEF because they supported us in a very disrupted way, so we could do the first presential regional conference of youth this year, last September in Costa Rica, we were 300, yeah, more or less 300 youth from the region all together, many days, and it was literally very disrupted the way, because from one day to another, hey, we need plane tickets, and usually we had to wait like, I don't know, weeks, months of paperwork, and here they did a huge effort to break a little bit the rules, I believe, and see the way to make things done. I'm saying this not because we are in the GEF Pavilion, not because, ¿cómo se dice chupar las medias, Mary? Okay, not because, yeah, it's like when the teacher, you're a student and the teacher is next to you and you want to say something good about your teacher so you have good grades. No, I'm saying this because we need more of this in every multilateral organism, in every government, in every bureaucracy agency, because as we know, we are in an emergency and we need to do things in a fast way. So this is an example of, and a precedent of how we can do stuff. As we always say the same. When the pandemic came, from one way to another, every government act or react and act, both, and we did something about the pandemic. Now we are facing probably one of the largest crises in the history of humanity, and we need to react in the same way. Apart from that, I would like to comment on what GEF should do. To start with, involve youth more, and more. Internally, because sometimes when we talk about youth, it seems like groups that are outside the system and we only shout and make noise. That is not what youth do only. But we also have proposals. We work in territory. We develop many public policies around the world, etc. The external youth we need to help every day, because we are giving our time, our energy, our capacity, our everything to face this adventure. But also, there's an intergenerational change that is happening, and we see it every day in negotiators, in different roles inside governments, inside the offices, lawyers, economists, communicators, in every sector. We are seeing that also inside the system with these things that I don't know how to say this, it's happening that international change. So we need more youth in both sides of the road, because probably many of us in both sides of the road, we want to go to the same place, but we know we need to work together. So more youth involvement. In the youth involvement, in every declaration of youth, we will see the finance bullet. In the first 3 bullets out of 10, usually you have the financial issue. And in the financial issue, because we are disruptive, or we were disruptive the last time, we need to find a way to facilitate funds, resources, money in a quicker way, because not every person in the world has a legal constituency. We don't sometimes we don't understand what that is, and we need the money right now. We need we have the projects. We are already doing this stuff with even no resources, and we already prove what happens when youth starts doing something. And then capacity building, something GEF could do, I believe, with all the knowledge they have and experience. We need a lot of capacity building in many things. So 2 aspects, money and capacity building, and inside money, how we can do things in a more efficient way.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks to the 3 of you. Let me go to a second round here, And thanks, Maximo, for being so concrete on your recommendations to the GEF. It'll be great to hear from Patricia and Jackson as well. What are the specific recommendations that you can make to the GEF? You know, at this point, the GEF, as it looks into the future and what the GEF may be with the youth, we got multiple challenges. One is, how do we operate on the inside? I mean, we don't have any young kid working in the secretariat. In the GEF, we don't have it. We don't have a young kid leading the process in the GEF. I don't think that a guy my age can really lead the process. I mean, we can facilitate, but we need somebody or a group of people who has the thinking, the energy, the passion. So from there, all the way to how do we generate an impact? Which are the groups that we should be working with? I mean, we can dilute ourselves easily with so many interesting groups. And from the political perspective of the GEF, we need to work with youth that is inside the conventions. That's, for me, it is evident, because we can dilute ourselves. So we need to focus, narrow down, and be able to be a partner of groups that are already there, because this makes a lot of sense to us, since we are a financial mechanism of the conventions. The secretariat of the conventions may be very happy with these ideas, but in this event, besides the fact that it's great to share the vision of the GEF, it is super important to receive feedback to us at the GEF on how we should be doing things. So let me pass it over to Patricia and then to Jackson, so we can go into more of a dialogue format now on, and then I would like to open the floor to the participant assistants of today's event.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And is it audible? No. Oh, it's working. Okay. I will try to use an illustration on what I envision GEF to be. And assume you are standing on the road and it's raining heavily. Every part of your body is well soaked with water. And from afar, you see a vehicle approaching, and you try to flag it down. So if this vehicle stops or does not depends on the driver. And the driver and the vehicle here is GEF. So what I'm trying to say, we young people are on the roadside. Majority of us are confused. We come from diverse, and we bring a lot of diversity, come from diverse countries with different mechanisms. What we are requesting, or what we envision, is that this vehicle will stop by to accommodate us despite our wetness, and once we are inside this vehicle, the driver will show us where to sit, will give us clothes to change, will accommodate us. And we spoke about youth, and the vehicle can stop and accommodate young people, but it's about inclusion. It's about meaningful engagement, because restoration and everything does not stop at the moment. The vehicle can stop, can accommodate us, but the vehicle might decide to say that's the end of destination. So what we'd like to see as young people, GEF incorporate, is meaningful inclusion of young people, because in some countries you find young people lack the muscles either to do some things, to be meaningfully engaged. But with GEF, I'm so sure the mechanism can bow down to ensure we accommodate a lot of young people, because a lot of young people doing a lot of work in restoration, doing a lot of amazing work, they are from the rural communities where this information might be difficult for them to reach. And what I would recommend is perhaps you bring GEF ambassadors per countries. And through these young ambassadors, they can now mainstream what GEF does. How can GEF meaningfully engage with young people? And through the thematic and through the 3 Rio conventions, through their youth, focal points, or rather through their youth engagement to the convention, they can now mainstream the work of GEF, and we can easily collaborate, because I believe in meaningful engagement. And as we are talking about a regeneration decade, regeneration and restoration does not happen in a day. It's a process. Today, I'm super happy because this is a process that has started for young people to come in on board to participate and meaningfully engage with GEF. So I hope this journey starts with a positive, positive impact that it will not only stop at conference. And second, about capacity building, because I have known what GEF does and the amazing work and the connection with countries and other civil societies. We have a lot of young people who are in the space, but they lack the expertise. They lack someone to hold their hands to cross the bridge. They have the knowledge, but they cannot negotiate. They have the knowledge, but they do not know how to meaningfully bring it into policy work. They have the school knowledge, but they do not know how to translate this. So we are looking at a new GEF, a youthful GEF that will give young people space to learn, to showcase their stories, and also to participate in some of these implementation process. When this money is given to them, to countries, we need young people to be part of the process, from the formulation, implementation, to the final results. And through that, it will be a GEF full of young people, a vibrant GEF, and a GEF that will work towards restoration together without leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was great. How about you, Jackson?
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm happy for the insight that Patricia has shared here.
Can you speak louder?
Okay, let me try. So just to start off, first of all, I want to reiterate your words, Jeff, what you said, that that investment in the system change is what we require. And you mentioned clearly that youth are this cohort that you want to invest in to bring about that system change. And one thing, I'm trying to look at it like you can also be the people to really break down that kind of procedure that are there at country level. Because I've grown knowing that it's very hard for a youth network to access GEF fund. You must be a country, you must be part of the government. And so I wonder, I've been wondering, because the money that you give to the countries is to make impact to the people on the ground. And we are the people on the ground. But now that you've taken that direction to think of how you can also disrupt the system, so you be our mediators, you speak to the countries when you are giving out this money to the countries, that we have brought in another cohort, another system changer, youth. They have these programs that they are running in their communities. They also need the same resources to make an impact. So that one, I think, is one recommendation that I'm trying to bring to your desk that you consider. More importantly, young people, we need trainings, we need education, we need empowerment, and we need incubation of our innovations. Because like back in my country with my network, we have put ourselves into different space, let me say, different programs within the biodiversity area, because we have different skills. There's someone who is working on marine ecosystem. There's one who is working on terrestrial. I'm working on the policy. We have people doing different things. But at the end of the day, we have programs that we need to run. But we need these programs, the ideas to be incubated. And what I believe is GEF has the expertise. If you can also try to capacity build, incubate the ideas of these young people so that they are more robust enough and competitive when it comes to even tapping into the resources that are at the country level, because that is also very key for us. It will increase our resource scope. Another thing that I think will be very important for us is in terms of empowerment, the issue of the leadership. Because personally, I am the policy coordinator for KYB in Kenya, for GYB in Kenya. But I feel we need GEF to give resources for young, because we are the future. And if I'm the future, then I'm a leader. I see myself as a leader. I see myself as a project coordinator in either at a ministry level or at community level. Then the empowerment is very key. Capacity builders give us those skills that are needed for me to drive the change that I need to drive in my community. Another thing that I feel is also very important is access to this funding. Access to this funding. I need to make this play that if it comes to young people, like in some countries we have what we call affirmative action. Affirmative action is a deliberate move by the governments to remove some blockades that can prevent certain group to access a resource. So we look at the eligibility criteria for accessing some of this funding for young people. We find ourselves not being eligible to find them because of the criteria that are in the place. So if you can be also deliberate and disruptive, as you put it, remove this kind of some kind of requirement for youth initiatives, so that we can be able to competitively apply for this funding. It will be very important because we don't have the same capacity to compete. So we need such such thing to be done to remove those blockades, make it less difficult for us to apply for these finances that you give to the countries. Another thing, I believe that you need to come up with kind of a micro biodiversity a biodiversity fund specifically for the youth. I know you fund biodiversity issues, but specifically where youth can tap and find themselves that this is where we can apply, so that we don't also compete with countries. We need that biodiversity fund specifically for youth doing programs in the biodiversity space. It's very important and it's timely that we really invest in young people. We give them access to resources. We give them not just access, but quantity of the resources also key, because Africa is majorly the youth who dominates African continent, and the impact of biodiversity loss impacts us more than any other cohort, we and women and children. And so we feel the resources must be with us more than any other cohort. So I feel that also the quantity of the money that you invest in that kind of fund should be enough to reach as many youth innovation as possible. So those are some of the recommendations that I think can really make GEF more interactive and youthful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Máximo.
Thank you very much to my colleagues. When we give resources to youth, we are not spending money, we are investing money. It's probably the best investment we can do. I hear all the time about renewable energy. Well, youth is the best renewable energy we can have. I like the idea of youth councils, I like the idea of youth ambassadors, but we cannot use that as a youth washing or as a green washing strategy. If we are going to involve youth, as my colleagues here said, it has to be meaningful. They have to be there to be listened. Because of the obvious, we are always repeating the same. We are inheriting the decisions, and it's not only the decisions of someone who is 30 years older than me. Also, my decisions, my nephew is going to inherit my decisions. So we are also in the chain of time. Youth councils now are like a fashion. Every company wants to have a youth council, every organism. So we should think how we can do this in a correct and good way. That is just an acceleration, or I don't know how to say that in English, because I already see a lot of youth washing with this. Then, so important to understand the diversity that we have in youth. Probably is youths with an S, because you cannot say youth as a group and that's it. We are so different physically, ideologically, culturally, whatever, emotionally. So yes or yes, we need to have an inclusive and diverse youth program, especially in GEF. And because GEF has this precedent as being disruptive, I think it could be really disruptive in a couple of months from now and launch something like this, so we give an example to the others. I'm like pressuring a little bit there, but yeah. What else? No, let's talk, all of us. Let's talk.
Oh, thanks to the three of you. A couple of reactions from my side, and thanks for the recommendations. So the GEF was created. It's important to understand a few things about the GEF because, in terms of direct access, dealing with barriers, it's important to know a little bit our model, business model. The GEF was created 30 years ago by countries in the conventions, where countries agreed to mobilize resources from the north to the south to support countries in the implementation of the conventions. That's kind of a simple explanation. In that process, it was agreed also to provide funding to civil society through what we call the small grant mechanism. Nevertheless, through the GEF funding cycles and projects, we support civil society, but through governments. Now, we don't give money to the governments so they do whatever they want to do. There are all kind of rules. There are rules in terms of transparency and accountability. There are metrics, and there are oversight. There are safeguards. The GEF investment cannot affect people. We don't support a project that is moving a community to create a national park. And there's a lot of good things of, pure common sense. Nevertheless, we are a multilateral mechanism that works within governments. Now, I explained earlier that will continue to be what the GEF does, but in order to really address the need for the system change, the GEF needs to go beyond this, additionally to this, and work with the youth. Otherwise, the pace of what we do will continue to be slow. And as we create the conditions so the right hand of the country really knows what the left hand of the country, I was saying earlier that in governments, the government invests in deforestation through policies, and on the other side, they work on forest conservation. So a lot of incoherence. As we deal with those issues and help the governments put their act together, we need to work with the youth. And working with the youth means a new approach, it is a change of paradigm for the GEF. So we won't be working with the youth through the governments. It should be directly with the youth, not through the government. Because we know that the government it will be a political control of the youth. So I'm a politician, I know how it works. Nobody needs to explain me. Eventually, whatever we design into the future should be direct access within the GEF and the youth. That's one point. The second point, yes, there's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of commitments about engaging non-state actors, engaging the youth, and there's a lot of commitments from many different sectors, from ministers, from everybody. But you know what? The GEF is the only one that has the money. The other, they talk and talk and talk. The GEF is the one that has the money. That is why it is so important for me, for us at the Secretariat, to talk about these issues, because we got the money. Of course, we don't have the flexibility to decide we go this way or we go that way. But all together, we can design mechanisms to provide strategic funding to the youth. That's my second point. The third point, which is important, is that we need to design mechanism that responds to the conventions. I cannot be providing funding to the youth working outside the conventions. And when I say inside the convention, that means a lot of things. I'm not limiting the possibilities to do things. And yes, of course, a youth GEF program is important. Eventually, when you see the logo of the GEF, that over there, that logo, when I see it reminds me of 30 years ago. It's if the idea of having a vintage logo was that was a great idea. I need to change things. We need to be there in the front line of the change. And as we continue providing funding to the governments, we need to bring the non-state actors inside. This will be a learning by doing process. And that guidance received by the youth is important. But I'm a little bit confused on how that mechanism should work. I've been establishing, relationship within the conventions with the youth and civil society, and we need to understand which are the legitimate groups of youth people inside the convention that the GEF can begin working in deciding a long-term program. And that is the whole intention in this panel and the things that we are working with. So I want to be able to do what the youth do. When we post a good story in Facebook or in Twitter, we receive 250 likes. I want to be 250,000. When any of you post something in Instagram, you got 75,000 likes, 200,000 likes, and the GEF only receives 250, 300. We want to be there in the front line of outreach and communication. And we are, the old generation. We don't know how to do this. We need to be the trusted partner of the youth. And yes, most probably my words excite you and makes you happy. But we have a real commitment because we have a mandate to finance the system change. And this is the new vision that is coming out of our replenishment of the things that we do. So I will say that it would be great if I can open the floor to the participants and be able to have an exchange, and then we'll have a final round of wrap-ups. I mean, I expect this to be a good brainstorming session to us. This is the first time that the GEF is doing this. We've never done it before. And we're, getting into a better understanding on how do we prepare ourselves to provide with strategic funding. Probably what we can do the next year is little, but eventually what we can do in 2-3 years can be a game changer to the youth. And once more, we are not the ones who talk. We are the ones who put the money, okay? And I'm not the owner of the money. I'm the manager of the money of the countries. The money comes from the north. So it is extremely important because I don't see youth from the north here, and I'm not complaining, but the youth of the north should be part of this process because the money that comes to the GEF is based on this political agreement within the north and the south. The money is coming from the north, is being invested in the south. Engaging the youth of the north in this process is extremely important because they are a voice of change in those countries who are providing the funding. And of course, it is evident how important it is the voice of the South, the youth of the South in this context. So let me open the floor. I got this gentleman, these other gentlemen, and the lady over there, and over here. And wait a second. And yes, Oliver, can you introduce yourself? And over there, okay. Well, those three over there in that line, and then we'll come over here. Yes, Oliver. Thanks. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're coming, and please stand up.
I'm Joseph Eruaki.
You need to speak
Yeah.
hard and very close. No, hard and very close to your mouth.
Okay. I'm Joseph Eruaki. I'm from Kenya. I'm not that youth, but I work with the Climate Injustice Alliance. This is an association of civil society organizations based in Nairobi and the quarters, but there's projects all over Africa, many countries in Africa. I'm very excited about this aspect of the youth and the fact that today the GF, you are finding it useful to bring the youth where they speak for themselves, they bring their voice. We know youth is also very fragile group. All of us at one time were also youth, even you are youth, but now you are elderly. But now the issue is, if we within this discourse, if we can think a way of making mechanism for funding and make it more flexible, so that even the youth organizations can be able to access the funds, because sometimes the problem is the ability to write the proposal in a context that youth, they may have ideas, they may have concepts, they may have very innovative way of even doing things, but the ability and the capacity to put that into context, into the language and to the flow that GF can provide the fund becomes a problem. And this is usually, I've realized, a big problem between the people who have the money and those who need that money for action. So there is usually the gap. So the money in most cases hangs with the experts who have the capacity and who have the resources to write in the language and in the context that is acceptable. So I think it is the high time also at the GF level, look at your funding mechanism, look at the work required to prepare a proposal, to prepare a concept that can be funded. Because without that, we can speak, it's like the fruits are there, the one who needs the fruit is down here, but has no way of picking the fruit and making use of the fruit. Number two, if we can also have maybe within that projects that can target also even the children who are in school, basic school. As they grow up, as they become also youth, more active, maybe out of school, then they can also be able to engage and also think through, get interest in what we are doing in the discourse that we are involved in this question of climate change, because it is affecting everybody.
Thank you. Over here, please. Oh, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Precious Kalombwana, a climate justice activist from Zambia. My question is straightforward. How can we apply for funding direct to you, not through the government? Thank you.
Thank you. There is no way a youth can apply for funding through the governments. There's no mechanism at this point. The only way that the youth can access GEF funding is to participate in the design of a project with the governments. And we've done it for many years through civil society. And this has been, positive and impactful. But those projects are not focused on the youth priorities. So this is, I would say, an indirect way of supporting, and not only youth, we see it in a broader way, which is civil society. The idea with this dialogue is to begin the process whereby the GEF can plan and present ideas to our council on how we can generate a mechanism where we can provide strategic funding to the youth. At the end of the day, there's something very important here. We at the GEF Secretariat, we don't take the decisions. We promote decisions with our council. Your governments are in our council. The work that you need to do through your government, particularly the GEF operational focal point, it's very important that you go to the GEF website and see who are the GEF operational focal point from the countries, so you can begin contacting your operational focal point, and that's the way it operates. Now, the idea is to think out of the box and create mechanisms where we can be able to have direct engagement and access with civil society. And I agree with you. Big challenges. Many groups doesn't have the capacities to write a proposal. But that is not just the case of civil society or the youth. That is the case with governments. We work through implementing agencies that help the design, the writing, the thinking on projects reflecting the priorities of the interest groups. And I think that we can come with a similar initiative. Yes, sir.
Hi, yes. My name is Pedro Ruiz. Today I'm a CTO of a company that promotes e-mobility, but I've also been a consultant for the World Bank, for the UN, and I worked preparing proposals for GEF, and I think that the first thing that needs to be done is cutting out the middleman. There is a huge amount of layers from GEF to the people. You go from GEF to the agency to the focal point, which is normally either transport or environment, and they have their own political agenda. And when they're building the projects which are imposed by the agency's interests as well, for example, if the UN wants to promote e-mobility, it will promote e-mobility as an agency to the focal point of the government, and then the government promotes that focal point down to the people. And when you come and speak about e-mobility in Latin America, and again, my company makes money on e-mobility, but if you fall in Ecuador and you start talking about electric taxis when they haven't even got unleaded fuel or low sulfur fuel on the streets, it's a huge leap. So there's no wonder that you don't find the technical speciality in the country to actually promote that technology and generate the local capacity in order to make that ecosystem later grow. And then you bring in what I call the Superman consultants from abroad, which I've been one, and we land in the country for 2 days and expect to know more about the problems of those countries in 24 hours and build a proposal based on what we see in 24 hours. And then that money, millions of dollars, are based on those ideas. I think it is an old-fashioned approach. I understand where it comes from. I understand that when it was built, there was no direct communications. Getting to the people was much more of a complex problem. There wasn't direct contact. Now there is. Using smartphones, using Instagram, using technology, you can pinpoint institutions that are doing things on the ground. And if you see the amount of money that is cut aside to pay for consultants that come from abroad, for huge consultant companies that have a 50% overhead on every dollar they push through their system, if that money goes directly to NGOs on the ground, with $1,000 they do miracles. With $1,000, a big consulting firms, there's nothing. So in my opinion, what GEF needs to do to pick up the pace and come to the 21st century is start getting rid of the middlemen. Start trusting people on the ground and going directly to them instead of going agency, government, consultant, people on the ground.
That's a good point. Let me do an explanation on here. It is not a middleman as such. It is an agency that facilitates the implementation of the GEF. The GEF doesn't have offices in 163 nations. If we work and operate with agencies that have presence around the country, and these are decisions taken by the countries, by all countries. So we work with countries. We work with countries which has high capacities and countries with very little capacities. If you want to do e-mobility, there are, in many countries, there are 100 countries that there are very limited technical capacity to do it. They need an expert. So the issue of the middleman, the issue of the consultant sometimes is used in a negative context. I've been a person that I've been there in the field, and there's a lot of needs to really, by which we can really support the countries. And the GEF is a financial mechanism within countries. So we are not a financial mechanism of civil society. We are not a financial mechanism of civil society. Civil society is important in everything we do, and this is clear in many of the countries that we work with. Now, in terms of the need of the system change, the GEF, looking into the future, sees a need to engage with non-state actors, as we see that non-state actors are becoming more prominent in the work that is done in the convention. And that is basically the interest of what we're having today, a little bit of brainstorming. Let me give the floor to other people here.
I just wanted to say that I am part of those middlemen. I was a consultant for one of your agencies, and I'm not saying that that is not needed. What I'm saying is, as you look through the funnel, the decisions are made for the people, and when it comes to the ground, it's basically, all right, you need to think about what you want to do on this matter, about this subject, because your focal point has decided that that is what the country is going to do, and that is also been I wouldn't say pushed, but promoted by the agency itself.
Yeah.
So when you get to the ground, there isn't really much wiggle room.
Well, and there's another thing that is important to talk here. I don't think that these people here are going to be youth the whole life. I don't think that they're going to be doing the same thing the whole life. These are going to be the leaders of the future. They're going to be there and doing the system change. That is why we need to invest in you all. And this is why we have the interest to have these exchanges. We have a big homework to do in front of us. And today is the first time that the GEF in a COP has these kind of dialogues in thinking on ways on how we will be working into the future. So I got this other one, and that one. And unfortunately, I need to stop here because they're calling me that there's a negotiation in a room that I need to be there. But we'll go here, here, and there.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign up. Yeah,
Your name and where are you from, please?
I am Benjamin. I'm from Chile, but I like to say I'm from Latin America because I feel the Latin American feeling and power. Well, I would like to start to say thank you because I don't know. I think that I lost the amount of time that I have heard the important as is the youth, that we have to include the most young people in the process, but nobody talk about money. Because we have the privilege to be here. We almost lost the privilege, but there is thousands of people that they don't have to be able to be here. So first of all, that. Secondly, in Latin America, we are doing an amazing impact, amazing like real actions, but we identify that all the mechanisms are really difficult, are not accessible, are not understandable, are not considering the impact that we do. Our impact are not inside of the indicators. The indicators are not made for us, are made for the renewable energy and power plant, implement a diversity, a mitigation action, but not for empowerment. So how we could become all the finance more like accessible and adaptable for empowerment, in this case of youth. And third, as my friend, I can say that said, we have to understand the youth is diverse between us. But we have our friend here, for example, of Africa, we have the same, let's say, overall needs. But if we go deep, we have different reality, we have different cultural, and we cannot consider like the youth like a global youth. Of course, we can do it, but if we go like deep, it's different. And the needs that we think and that we already need are more specific. So my other call is please consider the youth more local, more in the different groups, because we are different between us. So we have to create these mechanisms, but the different way as we are. So that is my third. My fourth call, and the last one, this pavilion should be full of investors, full of other people, because as I can see, there is a lot of people from the global south. As you said, we need more people from the north global. But we also need more investors like you, with the same feeling that you have, with the same speech and with the same mind that you have. And that is all, and please keep going, because we are doing the change and we are doing the action that we need.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Batokili Site, and I'm from Botswana. I say I'm a climate justice advocate. I'm with the Botswana delegation. So first, you asked for suggestions. I'm going to give you a few. Great that we've got the recognition of the need to fund youth directly. Also great that although we do have more youth in the space, we do realize that they need to participate materially. So they're almost lost and damaged Santiago network. great that we agreed on Santiago Network, but the real win is loss and damage facility. The real win is youth contributing materially. In terms of what this would look like, in the same way that GEF, the way that it was designed by countries. This then needs to be designed by as many youth as would like to benefit from it. Global Assembly, which last year, early this year, put out the People's Declaration, they had a great mechanism of how to get as wide contributions as possible. They had people who don't even speak English, got them translators. Maybe you can look into the method of how they picked the people who contributed to that. It'll give you a wide range of youth who can help you craft what the GEF youth mechanism would look like when it comes alive. And then the other suggestion is with flexibility, when you're doing the form, try and only have what you really, really need. Huge forms are very intimidating for adults, more so for youth. And then also, when it comes to, because one of the things when it comes to financing is that you'll need financial histories, you'll need some sort of history. And I mean, if you're 18, 20, what kind of financial history do you have? But then you've got things like recommendations from people that they've worked with. Looking at that versus a financial history, looking at just the history of the work that they've done and people to speak to it. And then lastly is on finance flexibility. A lot of us here speak to how much flexibility we want around finance. It's obviously not easy because it's money. There's an organization called Urgent Action Fund. I'm one of the advisors for the Africa branch, and they are the most flexible funding I've ever come across in my life. Possibly you could look at the structures that they use, and then that can inform, obviously you probably can't copy it and paste it, but that can inform a level of flexibility that you are able to extend to the youth, the GEF youth facility, as and when it becomes available. And those are my contributions, and looking forward to the GEF youth facility becoming a reality.
Thank you so much. Over here, we got our last participant.
Thank you so much for this session. My name is Shubham.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah. Thank you so much for this session. My name is Shubham Sethi, and I'm here from the organization called Young Leaders in Energy and Sustainability, Europe. So I'm actually representing a European organization. I'm originally from India, and it has been a very interesting and engaging discussion. But one thing which I've realized is talking about funding, an important thing to look into funding and finances is where the finances directed at youth goes towards. Because I've been involved in the European organization, and we have seen that within Europe there's a huge disparity between, when we talk about climate change, when we talk about knowledge, there's a huge disparity even within European countries. Like I come from Sweden. In Sweden, there's almost everyone's aware of it. When I talk about a country like Northern Macedonia, no one's aware of it. And there's a huge disparity in how the funds are allocated in the Sweden and in North Macedonia. So a very important aspect I feel is to be having some plan or some initiative to make sure that we have proper capacity building and proper implementation of the funds directed just at quality education towards youth. I say this because the challenges regarding climate change, biodiversity, electrification are very deep technical challenges. And if we do not have youth working towards them, if we do not have youth which are aware of it, we do not have youth which are dedicated in working towards it, it becomes very tricky to solve. And these funds can, if they are directed towards educating the youth in a proper way, it can really help make the change and provide us tools that we need.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We're getting to the end. A couple of very concrete things. One is, unfortunately, I need to run. Sorry, I need to run because the COP is negotiating the mandate to the GEF, and I need to be in that room with the negotiators. But a couple of things here. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for your presence here. Two things out of some kind of concrete things. The GEF Assembly every 4 years. It's happening next year in Canada. And it would be great if we can do a Youth GEF Congress where you brainstorm with yourselves. We support the activity. Hello? You hear? Hello, hello? So, I was saying, now you hear me? Do you hear me? Yeah, great. So we got the GEF Assembly every 4 years. It's happening next year in Canada. It would be probably a good idea to do a youth GEF kind of assembly conference parallel to the formal. You will see what we do. We can induce you to the GEF business model. You understand what the GEF does, because this is extremely important. As the gentleman over here says, the GEF is very complicated, middlemans and executing agency, a lot of things. We do have an impact. It's limited, but we have an impact, and that model should continue. But in the assembly, having a parallel activity can be a good idea, and I think that that can give us important feedback as we continue to work in ways by which we believe that we can design a mechanism. That's my first point. The second point, it would be great if you can post in Instagram today. You take a photo of the logo of the GEF, you put it in Instagram, and you say, I think that the old school GEF is changing for the youth. Do that. I will be extremely happy with you all. I want to thank everybody for the presence today. It's the beginning of a new process. I want to thank you once more, and let's work together. Let's work together and remind of something very important. The GEF does walk the talk. Why? Because we manage resources. This is the organization that provides funding. We say that we provide funding to the countries, and that is not correct. We provide funding to the governments. Help me to really make true the phrase that we provide funding to the countries. The countries is more than the governments. We got the commitment, we got the intention, there is political momentum, and we need your help, your assistance, your vision for the change in the GEF model, so we can one day really say, yes, we're working with the countries, not the governments. Sometimes we confuse countries with government. I don't, and I have this really clear. So there's a change happening, really change in the GEF. It began happening with the GEF replenishment. It began happening in COP26, where the youth, the non-state actors will recognize a role, and we have CBD COP15 just around the corner. This is another very important venue for clear mandates in terms of the role of non-state actors and the youth. So I thank you all for joining us, and please join me in giving an applause to our friends over here.